Hi everybody, I'm Sherry Grunska and welcome to Pro Barn Management. And this is my friend Tricia helping me.
Hello.
Welcome to tonight's live Q&A webinar. And excuse me while I have a little interruption here. I think we're good. Is it going now? Okay. Anyways, welcome to Pro Barn Management, and tonight I'm super excited because we're going to talk about things to look for when you're going to purchase an existing horse boarding stable. And it can get kind of crazy, so we're going to I'm going to kind of break that all apart and tell you what it looks like. If you have questions, go ahead and put your questions live, or you can message me. You can text me at 920-205-7518. And if you get on and you say hi, let me know where you're from. It's so cool to see people from all over different states and even Canada. So, and first of all, before I get started too, I just want to wish everybody, I hope everybody down in Texas is, if they're kind of hanging in there and doing okay, we're praying for you guys, and all the states where got blasted with this cold the last 2 weeks. Today, oh my gosh, thank goodness it was finally around 32 degrees. So what a difference getting the horses out this morning and bringing them in tonight. Oh, I was actually overdressed, but it was great to feel a little bit of warmth. So anyways, we're going to dive right in, and remember, ask any questions you have. We're going to answer them live. I'll do my best to answer them the best way I can. Before I go right into talking about buying a boarding stable, because a lot of people do, I have a couple questions that I was asked during the week, and I said that I would answer them. So I'm going to read them to you right now, and I'll just go through them really quick. And this one, it says, good morning. Wanted to reach out and let you know I really enjoyed watching the videos. They are very helpful to me, and I own a smaller private hunter jumper barn in Batavia, Illinois. I wanted to ask you, and I apologize if you've already covered this and I missed it, but I have a boarding contract I use and a rider release waiver for my barn that are specifically for my business, from my business attorney. When people come for a tour and are curious to board with me, I have a copy of that along with the price list organized in a folder for them for a nice presentation. It amazes me how so many people are turned off by this organization. I'm laughing because I'm like so impressed that you have that, and I think it's so cool, and I don't know why people would be put off by it. It's just, you know, I don't get it, because I think it's absolutely amazing to be so organized and have all this to hand out to people that are looking to board. You know, I guess maybe people feel like it's a bit standoffish when I present the contract. People panic when they see the price list, which I explain to them that these are the services I offer. You can choose to take advantage of them, or you can, you know, do it a different way. Also, I have so many people ask me why they need to sign anything. That's interesting. Reason being, when they come to me and they get turned off by my release saying at their barn they've never had to sign anything. Well, that's crazy. Makes me wonder if the places they're coming from actually have insurance and an attorney, or even run a legal business. And I personally know many barns in my area that do not do rider waivers or boarding contracts. What are your thoughts on that? And what happened if there was an accident or someone moves their horse with you and it takes off and the payment was never paid? It makes me wonder about people. So these are great questions. First of all, I want to applaud you for having a boarding contract, having your price sheet, everything there to hand to them. If it's going to make them feel uncomfortable, then they're probably not the right people for your stable. I think it's fantastic. I say keep doing it. It makes you look even more professional. A lot of times when I give a tour, I'll give a price sheet. I don't usually give my boarding contract, but I do when they're ready, unless they want to look at it. Some people want to see it ahead of time, and I'm more than happy to do that too. But the fact that you have it in a folder and you hand it to them, do it. Keep doing it, and the right people will come. It makes you look totally professional. Don't you think it makes you look professional? Very. Totally professional. It says a lot about your business. You're organized. It's well run. Do it. If someone can't handle that, say goodbye. Let them go on. I think it's great. Keep doing it. You can't please everybody. Don't try. Find the people that are going to be a good fit, and they're going to appreciate all the time that you did to put that all together. So keep doing it. Also, if someone is not having someone sign a waiver or a boarding contract, you know, there are barns that don't have, I have been to barns that don't have boarding contracts. And they are taking a huge risk of being sued. Same with the waiver. Can you be sued even with a boarding contract or a waiver if someone gets hurt? Yes, you can. You can still be sued. Anyone can sue you anytime. And but you are covering all your bases, and you're going to be better protected. But I would definitely, don't worry about what anybody else is doing. Honestly, it's your barn. I agree, you got to have everything in place, all the documents by your attorney, everything done correctly. Don't worry about what other barns are doing. Have your place stand out by how professional they are. So you keep doing it. The other part of that question, what happens if there was an accident or someone moves their horse with you and takes off, etc., and payment was never paid? I guess this is part of the boarding contract. So, oh gosh, I hope this never happens to you, but if someone at your barn moves their horse and doesn't pay, years ago I had someone leave. In fact, this was probably like about our second year into it. And they got upset at something and they pulled out, and they owed me for board for that month. I could have taken them to small claims court, but it just wasn't even worth it. They weren't from the area, and it was the only time it's ever happened. I guess now if it was to happen, I probably would follow through on it to make a point of it for small claims, but I would do it right away. Don't let it set. I would also make sure you have a boarding contract signed so that they know they have to pay their bill. That protects you. So you hope it never happens, but I have heard of stories where it's happened to people in the last few years. So that's where you really want to have a good idea of who is boarding at your stable. And if they're going to cringe at a boarding contract, then you don't want them there. That's kind of a red flag. They should be happy to sign a boarding contract. They should be happy that you're professional and doing everything the right way. So that's my little bit of thought on that. And do you have any questions?
You do.
Okay, go ahead.
If you don't have the ability to do a proper quarantine, what's the next best protocol for new horses?
Okay, I do not quarantine the horses coming into our stable, so that's probably going to sound a little bit, your mouth is probably open. I always say that because people are like, what, you don't quarantine? I don't, because the horses coming in, they have all their shots, they have everything they need to have before they come in. I usually will put them in a separate paddock by themselves for a day or two to learn their personality, to get them used to stuff before I put them in with a herd. But I look at it kind of like, you know, we have horses that go to shows in other states, they travel, they go here, they go on trail rides, endurance rides, they're all over the place. Who's to say they can't catch something at an event that they're at the same as coming from another barn? So I make sure, I do all my homework, make sure that the horse has everything they need before they come to my stable. Is there a guarantee that nothing will ever happen? Of course not. Something could happen, but usually if a horse, if they have all their shots, they have everything in order before they step foot off the trailer and come to your barn, then I'm not going to quarantine them. That's how I do it. That's how I've always done it. And some people might think that's just nuts to do that, but it's worked. I feel very comfortable with it. I've even talked to years ago to some vets about it, just to get their thoughts on it. And some people feel more comfortable with quarantining. I even knew of a barn that quarantined for 10 days, and I just have not done that. Now, I did have a situation years ago where horses were going to come to a barn from a barn that had a strangles outbreak like a couple months earlier. I would not let those horses come to our barn until the vets had tested the horses twice over a period of weeks, and they had to be quarantined at their barn for 30 days, and everything had to be clear for another before they could come to our barn. So by the time they came, months had passed. They also had been taken care of, shots-wise, everything had happened. But that was, I had to be very careful with that, and it was only after the vets had approved them to be moved and that it would be okay. And that was years ago, and I covered all the bases. So that's my thoughts on quarantine. Okay. And one more question, and then we're going to get to buying a boarding stable. And this one is, hello Sherry, I have a question. I rent out my barn to a trainer who has her 3 horses here, and it has been 4 months, and they are chewing on my wood fence rails and stalls. The owner said they never did that before, and I find it hard to believe. I told her they will need to be replaced. They are they're on a good feed program and turned out daily. I would really like to hear more about this and what your thoughts are. So, if you're going to rent out your barn to a trainer and they're going to bring horses in, then you want to have a contract written up by your attorney that is a business relationship with the trainer, so that if she's bringing horses in, any damages either has to be covered from the trainer or from her, so that it's all protected. It should not come out of your pocketbook. Some horses are going to chew. You could have them on the best hay and great grain, a great feeding program, but if they chew, that's just some of them getting a bad habit of doing it. We've had horses that have done that in our stalls too. So I would say, do you have a contract with this trainer and the business she's working out of your barn? I would get that all straightened out so that if someone has to pay, it's either going to be the trainer that's going to pay for the damage or the boarder. And if it's her clients and her horses that she's training, then I would make sure you're covered so that it's not coming out of your pocket. And what I would first do is talk to her and then say, I'm going to write up a contract so that you're covered, because it is it's your barn, it's wear and tear on your barn, it's your money, you have all the skin in the game. You had the loan, you made the payments, and one day down the road you may want to sell the place, and you want to be able to sell it for a nice amount of money because it's been kept in really good condition, and that all is part of it. The sad truth is there's going to be boarders and even some trainers out there that don't care if there's any damage to the barn because it's not their barn. And so you have to make sure you're covered and protected. And so that's what I would do on that. So, okay.
We do have a question.
Okay.
Do horses that come into your barn need a strangles vaccine?
So we have, I don't know what state, I don't know who's asking the question. Who's asking?
Beth Corbett.
Beth, hi Beth, where are you from? What state? Because it might be different for every state. I just was talking to our veterinarian the other day because we're getting ready to do spring shots here in Wisconsin. And
Wisconsin.
Oh, Beth, you're from Wisconsin, yay! And I was just talking to our veterinarian about the spring shots and what they look like for 2021. Was there any changes? And then we got in the subject of strangles. And so we have a thing here that we do that horses that are going to be 20 or over in age, they are senior horses, I leave it up to the owner if they want to have a strangles. They're older horses, they've been around a lot of stuff, and the vet said that they completely feel like that is totally okay to do. It's not one of the core vaccines compared to the rabies, the West Nile, Eastern, Western, all that. So for our senior horses, we have horses that are 25 and up, and I have a mare who's in her 30s. I don't give her the strangles vaccine anymore. So we have some horses in their mid-20s, and it's not going to be required. But for horses younger than 20, unless they have a health situation, allergic reaction, something where they can't have it, they will have to have it. So we have 2 horses at our barn right now that have been here for years, and with the vet's approval, they do not have a strangles vaccine. They're older horses, but not that old. But they have terrible reactions to the strangles. So we don't do that. And everybody understands that there are the ones, if you choose not to and your horse is 25 and you don't vaccinate, of course that's your choice. You're the one taking the risk, but older horses have, a lot of times have already been around a lot of that stuff. So I don't worry about it. I'm not going to give it to my 30-something mare either. And we feel very good with that, and that is by talking to the vets also. We've been in talk. Now, some barns make every horse have it. I don't do it to my senior horses, and that's how we do it here.
You do have another question.
Okay.
The boarding business we just bought has been deworming on a schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's better to do fecal egg counts and targeted deworming. How do you manage it at your barn?
Okay, so this is good. We're going to get into this now. You just, and answer if you can, you just bought a boarding stable, it sounds like. Is that what they said?
Yes, they
Okay.
just bought it.
Okay, so this is another thing that has changed a lot over the years, and I always keep in contact with the vets. It used to be years ago that you wormed every 2 months, and you rotated the dewormers. Every 2 months you did it. I'm so glad now we have an option. So what she's talking about, and I'm assuming most people know, but if you don't, you can do now they're recommending not deworming so often, 4 times a year. And if you do a fecal count and the horse is a low shedder, then you only have to do it in the spring and in the fall after like a killing frost. And so what I give here at our barn, because we have horses coming and going, it's a boarding stable, is I give our boarders an option. And they have the option to, now March is coming, April's when we're going to worm again. They have an option to get a fecal count, and no matter what, every horse on the property gets dewormed in April. Every horse. And I'll tell them what kind they can use, and I go by the recommendations from the vets. And every horse will do it. Either they'll have me do it or they'll do it, but every horse will get done. If they choose to do a fecal count and their horse is a 0 shedder, a low shedder, they do not have to deworm in the summertime. So in the months of July and August, September, they don't have to deworm. But then they have to, every horse has to be dewormed in the fall, like we usually do it in November, 1st of November, around there. So I have some horses that only get wormed twice a year because they're a low shedder. And then I have horses, they don't want to do the fecal count, so they worm 4 times a year. I'm okay with either or, and I let the boarders choose. But if they are going to do twice a year, then they get the fecal count done, and then they have to send me the paperwork that the vet would send via email or whatever, or give me a copy of it, so I have it in my records. And that's how I do it. It works out really great, and it's easy. It's easy for everybody to decide what they want to do with their horse, and I have probably half and half in our barn. Half will do it one way, and the other half will worm 4 times a year, and I give them a choice, and it works out good. Okay, any question? Okay, so that was a great question. We're going to go, and I wanted to talk about a little bit about purchasing an existing boarding stable, because I've had so much fun over the last few years working with people who have purchased a boarding stable, and a lot of them are already operating boarding stables. They're already going. They purchased it with the horses intact, horses and clients intact. And when that happens, there's a lot of things that go on, and part of it is, which this is the part that I don't want to happen to you, is they purchase these businesses. It could be for $1 million. I talked to a guy a few months ago who was looking at one that was $2 million. I mean, expensive places. Some might be less, some are smaller, but either way, the same situation was happening in every single stable that I've gone to work with, and that was that they purchased the place as the business was intact. They didn't know what to look for, and they're losing money. And they're losing a lot of money, and they don't even know where to start. And do I have a question?
You do, but it's relating to the wormers again.
Oh, okay.
We'll come back.
Okay. So, the thing is, I wanted to go over some of that stuff because it's really important. If you're going to buy a place, I just want to talk about some of the things to look at before you actually sign the papers and you have this mortgage. And even if you can pay cash for it, you don't want to lose weight. You lose, did I say lose weight?
I do.
You don't want to lose money. Okay. You don't. I always try to be professional in these things, and I'm really not. So anyways, okay. If you're going to buy a boarding stable and you're looking at everything, obviously you're going to tour it. I really want to talk about some of the things that I really want you to look at, and that is your business mortgage, your hay, your grain, your bedding, your fuel, your insurance, repairs, property taxes, employee cost and labor insurance and workman's comp, utilities, water. These things I want you to really look at. And the thing about it is, if you talk to the person who's selling the place, I really hope they give you honest numbers. The truth is, a lot of them don't even know what the numbers are, how much hay they're spending a year, how much their utilities are. They may know their property taxes, what those are. They may have no idea how much bedding they go through. I think what happens in a lot of boarding stables is they get so completely overwhelmed with what they were in, and now they're trying to sell it, and they're just not keeping track of good records. So then you get in, you think to yourself, okay, I have X amount of horses, I'm bringing in $15,000 a year, I'm going to be just fine. And then you get into it and you realize $15,000 a year is not covering it. You're $4,000 a month short. You didn't realize the labor was going to take so much. You didn't realize the hay was going to be so expensive and that you were going to go through as much hay. There's a lot of things to think about, and people get themselves in a mess. And we're going to break this apart, and just let me know if you have any questions.
I think the same person said, that's our situation. We bought the property and business already in operation. They feel like they did a pretty good job making it a seamless transition, but yes, they're starting out with lots of wanted and needed improvement.
Okay, and that's what happens. So what happens is you see this beautiful place, and I know of two particular places that someone purchased, and they were actually boarders there, and they ended up buying it, but they didn't know all the behind the scenes stuff because they just boarded their horse there. And then you become the barn owner and you have all these bills coming in, and you realize that things weren't as organized as what they should, or it was a lot harder, or the employees, you were spending a lot more employees, or this needed to be fixed. One of the biggest problems and one of the most important things I think I see in barns, and it's happened in a lot of barns, is you buy a place, you go look at it, and it looks gorgeous in the summer, and then you purchase it, and then you realize in the winter you could have snow or heavy rains and your barn is flooding. So you already know there's problems there with drainage. You have problems in the paddocks. Maybe the paddocks are flooding. Maybe the ground is a thick clay and the horses can't be out in it because it's just too muddy for them. It's not safe. There are so many issues, and water damage is probably one of the biggest problems most barns have. You know, it's not a house where you have a foundation and everything is blocked so the water doesn't go in the house, hopefully. And but you have that. A barn, you know, it sits on top of the ground, and you know, it's not, very rarely do you see barns that are made where the water is not going to come in at all. If we could have done something different with our barn, we would have put a cement wall all the way down and a frost wall all the way around. Well, our barn is over 200 feet long, and you know, our arena is 80 feet, and then we have 35 feet for the stalls. We just couldn't afford that. So water is huge. We had to raise our barn up like 3 feet to get it up higher so that we wouldn't have a water problem. But a lot of barns, they have such massive water damage in the spring, and especially if the snow is melting or you can't get the snow away from the walls in time, and it all adds up financially. And so it's something that to me is probably one of the biggest things I would look at if I was buying a place, is how is it laid out? How can we do the work to get the snow away, to get the water away from the barn? How does everything flow? And you're going to have to do some homework and check. You can go and find aerial shots that show how the water flows in the land, and that'll help you with that a little bit to see if the barn's in a low area or not. It can be very expensive to fix. And so, let me know if I have anything.
You have. Someone said, will you be sharing any sample budgets?
Oh, tonight? I'm not going to share, like, I can tell you about money, like our money situation, but to do it in an hour would take too long. But I guess if you want to talk about budgets, you know, I think the thing to think about is when you're putting together and you're going to buy a place, you need to figure out, before you talk about setting your board prices, you need to figure out what all your costs are. And this is where people, I think, get a little bit messed up, is when you are looking at a place to buy, you really need to find out how much hay they used the last couple years. And then you need to know what those hay prices were. And how the hay is fed is also huge, because you know, are they feeding round bales? Are they feeding individual piles? Are they feeding 3 times a day or twice a day? How much hay are they feeding? You know, I want you to, and that's why I can't talk about so much in 60 minutes, but that's why it's so important. I hope you guys, if you get a chance, you know, check out this book. I think you'll really like it. It talks about all this. It talks about budgets. It talks about prices. It talks about everything about boarding horses. So my goal was so that you don't lose money and you have it set up right, because these are things that people don't think about. Your bedding is going to be your second highest expense next to hay. You know, how are you going to do the bedding? You might buy a place and those boarders are used to stalls that are heavily bedded. And you realize when you get into it that all of a sudden you're losing $2,000 a month in bedding, and now you have to transition. How do I do that? Do I raise the board? Why did those other people allow that to happen, where they were allowing, you know, maybe that's why they sold the place, they got rid of it because they were losing money, they didn't see a way out of it. A couple places I've worked at, they have just lost a lot of money in bedding, and when I said to them, you have a choice, you can either raise the board or you can cut back on the bedding, because it was heavy, really heavy, and I said you can do it that way, look at how you're doing it. And they chose to reduce the bedding, and they had boarders that were upset, and a couple people left, but new people came, and that's what happens every time. You have to, it does no one any good if you're going to lose money. And it does no one any good if you're going to go out of business. You can't, I mean, if you go out of business, it's one less place for people to board their horses. So you have to get the cost under control. So I would definitely try to find out how much this, stable you're going to buy, what they're spending in bedding. Another thing is, and I don't know if a lot of farms have good numbers on this. I would pray that they would, but I just think some of them don't. What does the fuel look like? David and I spend $3,000 a year on fuel to run all the equipment to keep, plowing snow, dragging the arenas, feeding hay, putting manure out in the fields when we're spreading manure, even maintenance like cutting grass. There's a lot of fuel that we use every day, and it all adds up. And if you don't have that, $3,000 is a lot. I mean, a lot of money that has to be divided out amongst every stall, every horse, and is that figured into it? And those are costs that people forget about. Another thing would be that people often don't check into, and I hope that if you're going to buy a place is you find out what your property taxes are. That's pretty easy. That's probably one of the easiest ones you can find out, is what the property taxes are. The other one is water. If you're going to buy a place, find out if you have well water, if you have to pay for water, if you don't. Because if you are paying for water, you need to find out how much water you're going to go through, especially summertime versus wintertime. You're going to go through a lot more water if they're hosing off legs, washing horses. Horses may drink more. You need to find out if you're going to be paying for water, because again, it could be literally hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and that has to be absorbed somewhere. And so find out about water. Utilities, electric is a big one. If you have to heat buckets and troughs and all that in the winter time, find out, what their cost is. I'm hoping they have these numbers. The thing is, are they giving you accurate numbers? I sure hope so, but you might be able to do a little homework and find out too. Find out from comparable places what their electric is, because it can really add up. Employee costs and labor is probably the biggest one. If you're going to buy a place, I would suggest, if you could, watch how the operation is run. Go through the whole thing, see how it's run, find out what they're spending. I would say a majority of businesses, boarding stables, spend way too much in labor, and a lot of times they lose money because it's just gotten out of control, and it takes so much to get everything done every day. So I can definitely help you scale that down, but you need to get a good idea of what is going on here with labor, because you can't go in and all of a sudden you can't pay for the labor, because if you do, you're gonna burn yourself out really fast. Okay. The other thing would be, if you're going to do the work, so like David and I work at our barn, and this is my full-time job, and this is what he does full-time. So you have to figure out your expenses. If you're going to buy a business, how does that look for if you have a home loan, or if you have a car payment, your personal, what are you going to pay yourself so that you can live? You have to buy food. You might have kids. All that comes out of there too. So if you're going to board horses and buy this place, and it's going to be a business, because I do talk to people who say, well, we're going to buy a place, but we're going to also work full-time. If you're going to work full-time, then you have to have someone there, a barn manager or someone that is going to run the place, because things are going to be coming up all the time, especially if you have a bigger place. How does that look financially? So you want to kind of start making notes, getting all this That's why a business plan is so important to do. A business plan, a bank will ask you for a business plan, and they want to see if you know what you're doing and what your numbers. They'll do ask you to do a financial what's that called? Analysis. Thank you. A financial analysis, and they'll usually say for the next year and then like 3 years out. It's the best thing you can do for you too, because you really want to kind of wrap your head around what you're getting into. And even if you're not borrowing money, you want to do it so you're not losing money. I saw someone on Facebook earlier this week, and it was on a boarding owners thing, and she was kind of venting, and she was saying, she just said, there's no way I want to do this anymore. I want to board horses. But then I was listening to all the comments and what she was saying, and I realized that she just made it way too complicated. She needed to simplify everything and break it all down, and she had not done that. I didn't intervene. I just felt it wasn't my place, but I wanted to reach out to her and say, wait, it can be a much easier job. You just have to organize it, because it's a business. You can't just kind of guess at how much hay you're going to use. You can't guess at how much grain you're going to use. If people were to come here and ask me, I can give them the exact amount of how much hay, what the cost was for hay, what the cost was for grain. I know the numbers just so clear that if we were ever to sell, they would know exactly what we spend. And that's what I want you to know before going into it. And that may mean you doing a little homework and finding out what the expenses are. Okay. The other part is, if you're going to buy a place, what kind of farm equipment comes with that? And if it doesn't come with any farm equipment, you're going to want to think about what you're going to need to run it, because you're going to have everything is heavy. With horses, you're going to need a lot of equipment to move stuff, to get things from here to there, and it's repairs. So think of that. And I want you to think about the number of horses versus expenses. So if you're buying a place, and this is where I think people get messed up. And I get it, because I was the same way 15 years ago. You think, oh my gosh, I'm going to have 40 horses. And you add up all that money, and oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm bringing in all this money. And then you wonder why there's no money after. It's like, you add up all this money and it looks really good. It's more money than you've ever seen in a month. And then at the end of the month, there's no money. And then in summertime, you have to buy hay. And people are just shocked at the overhead that goes into boarding horses. And that's where they get themselves financially kind of messed up. So that's why I want you to take your time, put it together. A place may be a really good price, and it may be your dream barn, but it's going to be a nightmare if you're losing so much money that you can't even enjoy it, and you have to work a third job. And that's what I don't want you to get into. It may be a gorgeous place, and you may have a lot of boarders there, but if you're losing any money at all, it's not a good business venture. You should not be losing money. You should be making money. And so I want you to think about that. Just hop on in if you have a question.
One person asked, how often do you need to test your well water?
Oh.
Sorry. Slightly different.
Yeah, no. We've never had ours tested, I don't think, and we have really good water here. We've never had a problem. I think we had it tested when my kids were born. I think we had it tested when my kids were born, but that was 23 years ago. We haven't had a problem. But if you need to have that done, then I would ask a professional in your area. We have not had that done. Is there any other ones?
The other one was related to that wormers.
Okay, I'm going to get back to the worming, because I want to kind of continue on this. So I want you to think about, if you're going to buy a place, I want you to go there, and I want you to look at how the chores are done and take notes. Take as many notes as you can, and just see how they're done. You'll do things differently once you take ownership, but it's the way to start looking at, okay, how can we do this differently to save money? And sometimes you need a second pair of eyes to do that too, to say, am I seeing this right? Should it take this long? Should it take 30 minutes to clean a stall? No, it should not. The other thing that is really important if you're going to buy a place is I want you to see how it has been set up and how the history has gone as far as special services. So the reason that I think labor is so high at boarding stables and the reason that barn owners lose so much money is because a lot of times they offer everything in a boarding package, and no one has taken into consideration how long blanketing takes, maybe wrapping legs, holding for vet or farrier, all this stuff adds up, and you either have to do it or you're paying an employee to do it. And if you're going to buy a place, if it's set up like that, there is a very good probability you're going to lose money unless the board is so high that it covers it. But I have not found that. It's very rare that you ever find that. In fact, if anything, the board is not covering enough of that stuff. They're losing money and they have to revamp. And I say this I probably said it every week that I've been on here, but I think probably one of the most important things you can do is, if you're going to board horses, is separate everything, and that means special services. Pull it all out and say, okay, for board we offer feeding hay, fresh water, cleaning stalls, turnout. How do I want to do the grain? Because grain is going to be expensive. And if you're going to include grain and a horse is going to eat $60 worth of grain a month, is that absorbed into the board rate? Can you afford that? As a new barn owner, you could be losing money there, or you could separate it out. Same with special services. Oh my gosh, special services. You buy a place, this is how it's always been, now you have to transition, and you could be losing money again with employees and labor because they're changing blankets twice a day. They're holding for the vet appointments, for farrier appointments, and you're not making any extra money on that, and you're paying employees to do that. So I want you to start making a list. And do you have a question?
I have a couple.
Okay, and I think we have a question.
What do you do if you have budgeted for a certain income and then find out some boarders are behind in paying, or that some workers are working to pay off their board?
Okay, so this is the place you purchased, it sounds like. I'm assuming it's a place. Is it a place you just purchased? And that's what they've been doing is, say it again, the boarders.
Some of the workers are working to pay off their board.
Okay.
But some of the boarders are behind in paying.
Okay. So, first of all, I don't do any bartering at all. Okay. We do have some boarders that work for us. They are on the payroll. They get a paycheck at the end of the month. I have workers' comp, and I do everything that way. And then I give them a right amount of paycheck. And then if they want to turn around, take that to the bank, and then write me a check for board, and it helps with their board, great. But I don't do any bartering at all. If they get hurt while they're working for you, you're going to be liable. Second of all, if you just purchased a place and they're late on board, and I don't know how late, months, but you need to have a talk with them. You need to sit down. I don't let it get that far. They don't get to be 2 months late. It's just not going to happen here. I do charge a late fee, and it's a business. I have bills to pay, and the way I have put it to my boarders is, that's my paycheck. That's how I get paid. You wouldn't work at a job where you didn't get paid. and they shouldn't expect you to work for free either. And I don't have that problem, and they understand that. The thing is, if you've got someone that is that late, they shouldn't be boarding at your barn. Now, if you purchase the place and they've already been there, then you need to talk to them. But if they get too far behind, you probably need to talk to your attorney and find out the best route to go with that situation. But I don't let them get behind, and I let them know that this is how I get paid. This is my paycheck. Just like you going to work at your job, you wouldn't work there very long if all of a sudden they stopped paying you, or they said, well, we'll be 2 months late on your check. They have to realize this is your check. This is how you live. This is how you pay for everything to keep the barn running. And it may sound kind of, in their mind, it may sound harsh. It may sound like, I guess harsh would be the right word. But you're just being firm, and this is a business, just like everybody else's business. So I don't let it get that far. But if you purchased a place and that came with that, then you need to take care of it. And the thing about purchasing a stable that's already going is, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to have a huge transition. You're going to have people that don't like change. They've liked it how it's gone for the last 15 years. They want it that way, and now you're coming in and you're rocking the boat. They don't like it. And that's just too bad. I mean, that's just life. You've just spent a lot of money to buy the stable, and that means there's going to be change, and it might not be change they like, but you have to tell them that you have the horse's best interest in place. You're going to give them the best care possible. If they still don't like it, then it might be time for them to change and look for a stable that is better suited to them. Change is never easy, never. And it's really even harder for someone who buys a stable that's already going. Our barn was brand new, so we kind of learned as we went. I had people come with their views of how other barns did it, but I didn't buy an existing place. If you're buying an existing stable, you've even got a double whammy there, because you're dealing with a lot of people who don't like change. And I would say the best thing you can do is be upfront with them and tell them, you're going to be making improvements, you're going to be doing whatever you can, but there are going to be changes. And you're going to go through change. You might have people leave, and that's okay. It's kind of the way life is, people will leave, and then new people will come in, and they're going to like how you do it. You will have people that will probably stay and weather it with you, all the changes, and see what's going to go on. And a lot of times those changes are just so much better if they will just wait it out. But you can't control how everybody's going to handle it. So I would just, say this is how we're going to do it, and this is moving forward, what this looks like for this stable. And that's kind of how that goes.
She did answer. She
Okay.
says it's in the works, her trying to buy something, I believe.
Mhm.
But she is a boarder there, and she's heard things.
Okay.
So she's trying to buy the place she's boarding in,
Okay.
I believe.
Okay, so if you're going to buy the place and you've already heard this stuff, then once you get to the point, because right now I guess if I was going to buy a place from someone who owned a place, I would go up to them and talk to them about that situation and say, tell me about the clients, is everybody current on their bills? It's a business question. It is not personal. But the thing is, honestly, I don't know legally if she can give you that information until you actually sign the papers. And that part you might want to check and ask. Because that's a confidentiality thing, So I don't know if she can actually do that. But if you have a contract or you're signing the papers, then I would think as you becoming the new owner and you have a closing date, then at that point, once you own it, you should be able to find out exactly who owes what. I would check with your attorney on what exactly you can ask and what you can't, because some of that stuff is confidential and I don't know if they're allowed to give it out. It seems like that would be in my mind how that would work. But all the other stuff, as far as the expenses of the place, that she should be able to give you. That has nothing to do with the clients. That she should be able to give you. So I guess that's how I look at that.
We have another question.
Okay.
Are the majority of boarders that approach your barn through word of mouth referral, or do you advertise on Facebook, for example?
I think, I don't even ask people where they've heard of us, but it's from our website. They usually say they've seen our website. So I guess they've heard word of mouth. I hear a lot of word of mouth and website. I always tell people, if you're going to advertise at a stable, and especially if you're new, you have to think big. You have to kind of think globally, because people are moving constantly. And you could have someone in California that's getting ready to move to your state, and they have horses and they need to move their horses. I just had a call the other day from a woman who was relocating here to Wisconsin from another state, and she saw our website. So I personally think, for me, what's worked really well is to have a really nice website. And then I also use Facebook, but I don't use Facebook solely. I think a lot of people don't use Facebook, and I think it really looks professional when you have a good website. But they can go to both. The Facebook will always bring them back to the website, and they can contact me through there. And the thing about a website is, and once you're set up, is if someone is in Texas and they're moving up here, they can Google horse boarding in Wisconsin near Oshkosh or something like that, and we'll usually always come up. And that's through the website. I think it's really good to have a website. I always think globally, because people are moving all the time, much more than they used to. So don't just limit it to your small area. As far as clients coming, you never know when someone gets married and they're moving to a different state for whatever reason. There's just so many options there.
A couple more. One
Okay.
was on the last question you were talking to the woman about. And she asked, if the boarders are in arrears, isn't that money owed to the previous owners then?
Oh, I'd have to, you'd have to, I would think so, but I think I would ask an attorney how that all works, because I'm not a lawyer. So the thing is, if they owe money, it would be owed to the previous people, but I would find out how that all works with the change of ownership. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that.
Okay. Let's see. If you have a smaller barn, say 8 to 10 stalls, would you suggest doing some special services to make up for the lack of amenities?
Say that again.
If you have a smaller barn, say 8 to 10 stalls, would you suggest doing some special services to make up for the lack of amenities?
Well, first of all, I think smaller barns are so important. Not everyone likes a large barn. We've had people, I had one lady years ago that came to our barn and it was too big for her, and she wanted a quiet little barn. So there are a lot of people looking for a smaller place. In fact, a lot of people don't want a huge barn with tons of stuff and people going and coming, and they want a much smaller place. That in itself is an amenity, and you still have to do it. Even if you have 8 horses, it's still it is still work. If you have to blanket 8 horses, it's still work. It's if you have to, you can offer, the beauty of it is you can offer whatever you want. You can offer holding fee. You can do it however you want to do it. For example, for spring shots and fall shots at our barn, it'll be an all-day thing. The vets will come out, usually 2 vets, and they'll do teeth and sheath shots, whatever people need. I'm there all day long. A lot of people can't come because they work, and I don't charge a fee for that at all. Those 2 vet visits, I don't charge anything, and it's something I can give to my boarders, and I'm happy to do it. But the rest of the year, if I have to hold a horse, I do charge a fee. So I look at it like that. So if you have something special you want to do for your boarders as something like a nice thing, a perk, do it. Yeah, if you think you can handle it time-wise, then do it. Just remember, just think it really well through how you're going to decide to do that, because some things definitely are more time-consuming than others. And even 8 horses is a lot to have to switch blankets. It's just something, that's how I look at it. So yeah, you can do whatever you want, but don't underestimate the power of a smaller stable. I think a lot of people like smaller stables. They're not so intimidating to maybe certain riders, and they like the quieter atmosphere, and especially people that are a little older. So that's a huge asset. So yes, I would definitely advertise that. And I'd advertise a smaller, quieter barn with individual feeding program. It's totally a great thing. So do it. You've got a niche there. So do it.
What is an acceptable turnover for boarders per year? 5%? 10%?
Okay, so what's an acceptable turnover? Oh gosh, someone asked me that question a couple years ago, and it's hard to answer, but it depends on what the situation is. I don't like any turnover, of course. We have very little turnover here. But if I have a bunch of people leaving because, let me backtrack. When we first opened, we made a lot of changes over the first few years. A lot of changes. Because we were offering too many things. It was too much work. I mean, it was just crazy. And I had a lot of people leave because of all the, everything was unstable. When you have horses coming and going, the herds become unstable. It's just a lot of change with everything. And it's a lot of more time on your part, even introducing people to how everything is done. Very time consuming. I had a lot of people leave. Now, I have very few people leave. Maybe, I had 2 people leave last year, I think it was. 2. Well, I take that back. I had 2 family leave because their horses went to a training barn, a saddlebred training barn. And so they left for that reason, and that made perfect sense for them. And then I had another couple leave and follow them there. So I had 4 horses last year. And I was okay with that because of the reasons they left. If all of a sudden I had 10 people leave because they were unhappy with, something that was going on in the barn, then I'd probably have to talk to someone and get a second opinion and say, okay, what's going on in my stable that all these people are leaving? What am I doing wrong? You're not going to please everybody, but I do believe there's enough people out there looking to board horses at a nice place that takes excellent care that you'll find the right people for your stable. When you think of all the thousands of horses, boarding 10, 15 horses is not a lot of horses to board when you think of all the horses out there. So if I have a lot of people leave because they're unhappy with the care that I'm giving, then I've got some huge red flags. If they're leaving because of family situations, or their kid goes to college and they leave for, they sell the horse, or they go to a training barn for saddlebreds because we're not that type of barn, it all makes sense too. So I can't control life circumstances, so I can't give a number on that. But for overall, we don't have a lot of horses leave. It's pretty steady here, the herds, and the people that stay have stayed for years. but it took a while to plateau to that point where I knew what I could offer, I knew what I didn't want to offer, and the people that came were willing to accept that, and I was able to really hone in on the best possible care I could for the horses here at our stable. So I would probably keep track of why people are leaving. And I guess that would be my first thing. If you're a new barn owner, you're probably going to have transition, and you're going to have people change as you're making changes. We had everybody left from when we first opened. Pretty much everyone left, and I didn't know how to figure that all out. It took me years to kind of figure that out. And why are they leaving? And it was because I was making all these changes, and they didn't like it. And I understand that, you know, it makes sense. You know, we were offering stuff, and then all of a sudden we were taking that offering back and saying, nope, we don't do that anymore, or we're going to charge for it. So I totally got it. It made sense. So I guess that's how I look at that. You can't really put a percentage on it because you don't know what's going to happen. And you might have families with multiple horses. You know, I have a lot of families in our barn that have 2 horses, and one family that has more than that. And if they leave, that's a big group of horses that leaves. So it depends on what the situation and why they left. So I hope that helps. Was there
just the wormer question?
Oh, okay. Okay. Ask the wormer question, and then we'll go.
Yes, no.
Okay.
Do boarders pay for the wormers?
Oh, okay. In our barn, no, they don't. I mean, let me see. Yes, they do. Oh, I can't get through one of these without cracking myself.
So was that clear enough?
Okay, let me make it clear. At our stable, we do not include wormer. They have to buy it, or I will buy it and I will add it on their invoice. So I will buy like I'll send out an email and say, okay, who would like me to purchase like Equimax for them? I'll buy it because I usually buy it online, and I tell them what the cost is. I don't make any money off of it, and then I just charge them what I pay for it. I do that because it's a little cheaper than like here at Fleet Farm. But there are barns that include wormer as part of the board, and they include that. But if you realize, okay, wormer is going to cost you, if it's like Equimax or Zyvectra Gold, it could be $13, $14 a tube. Do you have that kind of money? Is that built into your board rate over the course of 12 months? And if are you worming 4 times a year or twice a year? The idea is you can offer it, but unless you are completely debt-free, where you can give some of these things away as gifts and as part of the board, you have to be able to you have to get that money back, because you don't have, just money just to be throwing around, because you're going to be spending it on everything else under the sun. So you can offer it. It looks good and it's nice, but you still have to have it paid for, so just think of it that way. The boarders pay for it, but I do order it for them, and then they just pay me on the invoice. I realize we're already at an hour. I think that's about it. There's so much to talk about, but I just want to say real quick that if you're going to buy a place, or you have purchased a place, or you're thinking about it, you're going to go through a lot of changes. You're going to go through a lot of changes, especially if you're transitioning from a boarder to a barn owner. And your relationships may change with some of your clients, and be ready for some of that emotional roller coaster. Her phone keeps going off. And you're going to go through some changes that way, and don't beat yourself up. Don't get hard on yourself. You're going to grow over the first few years like never before, in especially your horse knowledge. Even if you have a degree in equine science, when you're taking care of other people's horses, you're adding in the whole element of the person who owns the horse, and it becomes very emotional. There's a lot of moving pieces to that. So take it one step at a time. Always be willing to learn. And it's okay to make changes to your business. It's a business, and you're going to grow. And so if you're changing things, understand that not everyone will like it, and it's okay. And if they leave, you'll have new people will come in. Keep your care consistent, And if I can say anything, check out a step-by-step guide to starting and running a successful horse boarding business. I talk about so much in there in great detail about all this stuff that was just never talked about to me. And when we built our barn, we were lost. And you can go on probarnmanagement.com and order it through there, Amazon. And I think that's it. I'll have this live on Facebook and then on the website, Pro Barn Management, and also YouTube. And if you have any questions or anything you want to talk about in the coming weeks, just let me know and I'll answer any questions you can. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know the answer and then try to find out the answer for you. And keep warm. I want to wish you a wonderful week. God bless you, and wishing you the very best in your horse businesses. And we'll see you next week. Thank you.